Sometimes even the best of intentions have unfortunate results. It was in 1892, 1 year after 11 Italians were lynched in New Orleans, that the whole idea of Columbus Day came into being. It didn't go into actually being a holiday until 1934. But in all those years, we've learned that this particular holiday hurts a lot of people. And that's been changed in a lot of places. And I'm delighted to be joined by Councilmember Mitch O'Farrell from District 13. And here in Los Angeles, that whole idea of Columbus Day has changed for the last 2 years to Indigenous Peoples Day. Why was that important for you to put into place?
So in 2015, I introduced the initiative to replace Columbus Day from the city's administrative code with Indigenous Peoples Day. And after a 2-year journey, we were able to do that and adopt the official law in 2017 and then celebrate it for the very first time in Los Angeles in 2018.
I was surprised that the intent of Columbus Day was never supposed to be focused on Christopher Columbus. It was actually just marking a moment in time in which American, as they knew it then, and I'm going to be very careful in the way I say it, America, started its journey, and there was this backlash against Italian immigration and against Catholicism, and how things got skewed over the years and became a situation in which Christopher Columbus as an individual was being honored. And if you look into his history, there are so many atrocities, especially in regards to the indigenous people that you are referencing.
Right. So Christopher Columbus, like it or not, became the symbol.
Right.
Statues, monuments, major cities have been named in his honor.
Right.
And he himself, the historical record, is a fact. It reflects the acts of violence and really murder that he was responsible for personally. And then his 2 subsequent trips subjugating an entire native population across the Americas, Central and South America. And this is a man that never stepped foot in the continental United States and never discovered really anything.
Right.
So this isn't about the Italian culture or the Italian immigrant community or any particular heritage at all. It's about honoring the folks who are here before any of us to make it possible for us to live the life that we do and a way to honor First Peoples.
For some very sad reasons, obviously, because of COVID and because of the social injustice that we have all witnessed recently, probably energized people's verve to get going with this mindset.
The awareness of genocide, slavery, racial inequality, structural inequities just took a quantum leap forward after the murder of George Floyd. And the whole Native American cause is part of that zeitgeist. Native Americans in all the states didn't even have the right to vote fully in all of the states until the 1970s. Now, we were able to remove the Columbus statue, and that was on county property at Grand Park. And that was a struggle. The populations are just starting to tear these statues down themselves because of what they represent.
Destruction on its own is a negative thing as well.
Well, it is. Well, we know that the statue of Junipero Serra was torn down unceremoniously in June. The Native American community has been working for years with the Catholic Church on what Junipero Serra himself represents to local Native American tribes. That was a bit of a wake-up call for me to say, wait a second, that was on city property. We need an official way to deal with issues like this, which is why I've introduced a resolution that will become a city ordinance on how to actually recognize historical figures, monuments, and honorifics across the city of Los Angeles so that we can deal with some of these negative symbols of oppression that we as a people hold in high regard. Imagine what that does to a Native American kid or a black kid. It takes a psychological toll because you're told by the greater society that you are less than because we are celebrating this person who did something really bad to your people and your minority group. So we have to deal with all of that.
When you're dealing with the idea of these monuments and their symbols and how they can be painful, there's also the issue of the fact that these are works of art and it's a very tenuous balance that needs to be created. How can we address that without making it a problem in the future?
There are as many opinions about what to do with deassessed or decommissioned artwork as there are artists. Some of these works, sculptures, were created at a different time entirely. I'll give you an example of the Columbus statue across the street at Grand Park. That was commissioned sometime in the 1970s by an Italian heritage group and was manufactured and then donated to the county of Los Angeles. Well, we placed it in storage, and it's up to the county, the County Arts Commission, to reach out to whomever they can find from that organization from the early 70s that donated it. So we're not going to just demolish it or destroy it. That has to be dealt with as well. The deaccessioning is more complicated than we're just going to tear that statue down. The important thing is that these monuments to folks who were guilty of genocide and or defending slavery are no longer in public view. That's also a conversation. Sometimes organizations want these statues donated to them, but that needs to be dealt with too, because in what form will they then be exhibited? So we certainly don't intend on causing additional harm. It's going to involve the artists and advocacy community to deal with how we deassess these statues and, figures of oppression.
There has to be thoughtful process both in taking things down as well as putting things up. So how does one go about doing that? Is there going to be a historic research committee? Is there going to be, a vote? How do you foresee that happening?
We created the template with Indigenous Peoples Day. We'll definitely form a working group. It'll be made up of local Native advocacy groups and anyone else who wants to join into the conversation. That will generate reports from city departments that will inform us, the elected officials, way forward on creating an ordinance that will deal with proposals. It will deal with currently, negative celebrated figures that are recognized as symbols of oppression or hatred. We'll involve scholars and historians and academics in this conversation, just like we did with Indigenous Peoples Day. There is no doubt in my mind that it will lead to information that a lot of people don't realize. And perhaps it'll lead to a way to honor the Tongva more because they were the folks that we've displaced centuries ago. To build the lives that we're all now enjoying. Real change, real policy change is important. Public safety reform, all important things, but symbolism is very important as well. That can lead to a larger conversation about how we make society more fair and equitable for everyone.
And what are you going to do to celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day?
The first Indigenous Peoples Day at the steps of City Hall was historic. We had Redbone and we had the Black Eyed Peas and other famous musical groups, and we repeated that last year as well. So we're working closely with the City, County, Native American Indian Commission on a virtual platform of celebrations. But we're gonna shift on IPD toward advocacy, and while we celebrate what it is to be of Indigenous and Native American heritage at the same time. Human beings, we evolved from tribal units. And so I hope that everyone can relate that to be Native American is also just to be human. And we have a lot that we can learn from our Native American history. And celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day is certainly a way to do that.
Great. Well, congratulations. And I'm sure your grandfather would be very proud of you.
Thank you so much. I hope so. We all live in the existence of our ancestors, and the spirits speak to us. My grandfather, my mother, they're all very, very close to me and always will be. That's part of the legacy of being of Native American heritage as well.
Great. Well, it was wonderful seeing you again.
Thanks, Maria. You too.
And that's a wrap on this LA Currents.